This is the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Better Sports Network, and the FFPC. You can connect with me on X at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on X at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2025. That's RV Radio 2025. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel as well. Now, without further ado, here's the latest episode of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Good evening and welcome to the latest edition of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. My name is Eric Balkman. You can connect with me on X at Eric Balkman, EricBalkman. And of course, you know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Fantasy Football Players Championship, and FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. So good to have you aboard tonight here for November 11th, 2025. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. Remember, if you did not get a chance to shake a veteran's hand today, make sure you go ahead and right that wrong and do it tomorrow. Thank you to all our veterans watching, listening, viewing, streaming this around the world. Thank you so much for your service. It's going to be a good show tonight. Before we get into it, I want to remind everybody that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount when you enter the RV Radio 2025 code at rotoviz.com to make sure that you get a handle on everything they're doing there, including all the content and tools. Don't forget about the FFPC Weekly Challenge. The Thursday and Sunday editions are live right now. No draft, no salary cap. Just pick 10 or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses or not. One player per NFL team, win up to $2,500, 10, 30, and 100 team contests. However, like I said, only one player per NFL team. That means if you want Davis Mills, you can't have Dalton Schultz. If you want Dak Prescott, you cannot have George Pickens. MyFFPC.com is ready to go for that. MyFFPC.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Give you the live schedule of what we have going on this week coming up at the end of the show. But let's kick off the FFPC Family of Podcasts week of broadcasts, or streams, I should say, this week right now by bringing in my guest tonight. No stranger to these airwaves. He's been on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour before. He has 8 high stakes leagues to his repertoire in his career, including but not limited to FFPC, Big Gorilla, and Main Events. He is standing in 11th place overall as we head into week 11 of the FFPC Big Gorilla competition, a contest that is going to pay out a $1 million grand prize. And he's in the running right now. Please welcome back onto the show. You connect with him on the X at Dave_Chiodo on X. That is at DAVE_CHIODO. IODO. I don't know why I gave him an extra O there. Maybe because all the extra zeros he's going to cash this year in the FFPC. Please welcome in Mr. Dave Chiodo. Dave, welcome in tonight, man.
Hey, Balky. How are you, my friend? And I want to reiterate Happy Veterans Day to everybody as well.
Absolutely. Are you a veteran, Dave?
I am not. No, okay. I am not. But it's much appreciated. As you know, we wouldn't be able to do these things. So shake a hand, as you said.
Yeah, a lot of veterans too play in the FFPC. Yeah. Thanks to your for your service to all the guys and women that have served our country over the years. You are serving yourself a really good year so far. 11th place overall in the Big Gorilla. You've been up near the top of the leaderboard. I don't think it gets old. You understand, I think, like anybody else, like you're not getting paid for your weeks 1 through 10 performances. Right. Dave, still cool to see your name up at the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's been a fun year. It's a grind, as you know, but when I drafted this particular team, however, it was my first draft of the year. And when I do my due diligence, I try and write my list from the previous year as the guys I like, guys I want to target before I get any influence from outside, before I look at any of the pros versus Joes or any of that other stuff. I try and get a good read on it because I don't want to be persuaded. I watch enough football myself that There's nobody watching more football than me, I can say that, but I like to be able to do my assessments. And when I drafted this team, I'm like, I got some great value. So I was excited about it, but you never know. I mean, injuries can take a hold of your teams and, things like that, but it has worked out so far. We'll see if it can continue, and looking forward to, 3-4 weeks from now.
When you make this list of the players that you like, the players that you are targeting, the players that you want to make sure that you get on your teams before, like you said, you get into other content producers, before you watch Pros versus Joes here on the FFPC YouTube channel, what do you do with that list when they don't match up with what you're seeing as drafting season, preseason training camp goes on? Do you still target those guys? Do you start fading them a little bit? I mean, obviously it seems like if your list is matching up with what you're seeing everybody else doing, it stands to reason that you are still going to go after those guys. However, when your list doesn't match up with what you're seeing everybody else doing, how do you sort of suss that out?
Yeah, well, I mean, I look at everything. I look at coaching changes. I'll look at, schemes, offensive coordinator changes. Those type of different scenarios can obviously alter who is added to the mix. There's a lot of factors that I look at to try and identify who I think is going to be, a good opportunity that has the opportunity to explode and have that mid-tier range. I like to call it. You obviously, like this year, I was glad I didn't follow the lead. Travion Henderson had one explosive game, ran a kickoff back, and I think he jumped 3-4 rounds. I didn't jump onto that hype because that train, and I think he's a talented person. And if you have him now, you may be in a great position. But early on, those guys, those Harveys, those rookies, they're hard to predict. Now they may come to fruition later in the year, but what I try and do is I try and be consistent with my list. I try and look at the opportunity, see what's changed. And then from there, you look at the preseason and you see, are there any injuries, those type of things. I had, just for an example, I had Jonathan Taylor a lot higher than he was going. Now, I didn't have an opportunity to get him. I didn't have him ahead of McCaffrey. But, I had him in that range. I had him ahead of H-Chan and guys like that, but just never come around to get, that opportunity where the drafts fell to me. So there's guys like that you want to get, but it just doesn't work out for you. But my list is pretty good. When I do it at the end of the year, I revisit it before I start any of the drafts, and then I'll start looking at the contest to see where these guys are falling, and I'll identify from there which guys I think are going too late or which guys I think are going too early.
You mentioned Jonathan Taylor. Were there any other guys that you were higher on than consensus that you ended up getting on a few teams this year?
Well, that's what's crazy. Rookie wise, I love Emeka Ibuka, and the way this draft fell, I had already drafted 5 wide receivers. So when I'm sitting there, I needed the second back. And when I'm sitting there in the 8th round, he was still there. Now you look back at where he was going later in the draft. He was going, I think, late 3rd, early 4th. And I'm like, well, I absolutely need a second back because I had McCaffrey as my anchor. I was looking at getting Jaylen Warren. He went to pick before me. So I took another running back there. Well, lo and behold, he came all the way back to me in the 9th round. When I'm getting that kind of talent in the 9th round, that's why I knew this team could have been special right from that point forward. You sometimes you sit in drafts and you get sniped, and sometimes you sit there and things just fall on your lap. And he was one of the guys I had targeted, but I had guys ahead of him that I wanted. I had Jackson Smith and Jigba I was targeting in a lot of drafts, but he fell late 3rd. I think I picked 9th in that draft. He fell into the late 3rd. By the end of the, later in the year or later in the draft season, I think he was going, early 3rd in most drafts. So, I probably got, 6, 7 pick value on him. I love Tyler Warren, so my draft strategy is pretty similar, but yet I'm not beholden to anything. I try and go hero RB. I'll want a mid-tier tight end, and I'll wait on QBs. Now, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'll counteract that if the draft falls my way. But that's kind of the way I structured it. And in this draft, it worked perfectly.
The JSN thing, just to talk real briefly about that. I had drafted him early on, like February, March in a few drafts.
Right.
Then I kind of got away from it because I was nervous about Clint Kubiak coming aboard when they fired Ryan Grubb, who was passing too much, right?
Right.
And they let him go. So then I thought Kubiak was going to come on. This is going to be the Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet show.
Right.
Geno Smith is gone. They're bringing in Sam Darnold. I was very unconvinced whether Darnold could be a successful quarterback without the tutelage and the guidance of Kevin O'Connell. And I was just nervous because JSN was so good last year. I thought that maybe he was punching a little bit above his weight and there'd be some sort of regression to the mean this year.
Right.
None of those things have happened. Darnold's looked great.
Right.
Running game has not taken off. JSN has been even more efficient this year. You were higher on it. Tell us.
Well, I mean, he was one of those talented kids that came out of Ohio State, and they always produced great wide receivers. And when you look at him, you look at his first year. I mean, he had Lockett next to him. He had Metcalf next to him. He wasn't getting the touches. I think they had Noah Fant on the team, so he wasn't getting any looks. But when he did, towards the middle part of his rookie year, you could see the flashes. You could just see it. And then towards the end of the year, I noticed that he's running routes and he can get separation. And when I saw that, I'm like, well, he's a target that I want to look at. Plus, you want to get those second year, third year breakout wide receivers. He fits that mold perfectly. The opportunity, I was worried a little bit about the pass volume as well. And to be honest with you, they're really not passing that much. I mean, if you look at Darnold, he's probably maybe thrown the ball 30 times twice this year. He's just been very efficient and accurate. So, I mean, when those two things collide and he's the number one target, you're going to get this success. So we'll see if it can continue. But that's my biggest dilemma with this team. I have so many wide receivers on it that I know I'm going to make mistakes. It's just that's my fear that I don't pick the wrong guy in the wrong week.
I always like that as a good problem to have. I mean, if I have too much talent and I end up screwing up my starting lineup,
right,
because I picked the wrong stud, maybe I got there because I had all those guys to help me through injuries and bye weeks or whatever.
Right.
It is a problem, but like I said, it is a good problem to have. And the other thing too, and Dave, I think you've probably seen this over the years. I know I have. Sometimes when I have these people on who are winning, $100,000, $500,000, $1 million or whatever, sometimes they get the right injuries on their team that really make lineup setting easier because they don't have other options.
Absolutely right.
And so and then those guys go off and it was kind of an easy decision. And sometimes I think I don't care how good you are at fantasy football. Sometimes you need that power taken away from you. You need to save yourself from yourself to not screw up those. And it's something, I've never been into the position of winning like $1 million, leading up a 3-week lead up in before that is being paid out. But I got to imagine you'll lose sleep. And I'm sure if you're still in contention that late, you're going to lose sleep. But God, what should I do here? Buka, JSN, there's so many options that you have on this team in 11th place.
I do. Well, again, and I fight that every week, even with quarterback. I mean, I have May and I have Caleb Williams, and 2 weeks ago, I was going to play matchups, but May has been so good, but I was going to play against Cincinnati and I didn't. And obviously, Caleb Williams went ballistic and I think he had 40 plus. So, I don't want to get into a situation where I'm constantly trying to play matchups and I get stuck with trying to go back and forth. So I'm trying to be consistent with the quarterback position. But like I said, the good thing about having it is this is where I think I have a little bit more strength than others. I don't have any bad bye weeks because I have and I do have McCaffrey, so I'm going to have an issue week 14, obviously. And I'm getting the value of him for the first 13 weeks or the whole entire regular season, where somebody that has Jonathan Taylor, obviously they lose him this week. So, I think I'm one of 2 teams that didn't have Achin and Jonathan Taylor on it that are ahead of me. So, he's putting up numbers that are just so outrageous. Taylor he's lapping the field pretty much, but McCaffrey's holding his own. I mean, I think he's about 25 points behind him, but that's where the value is. I'm not going to worry about it during the regular season because I'm pretty entrenched in making the playoffs. But those playoff weeks, there's definitely going to be some sleepless nights. But that's where I'll do all the research. I'll listen to people. I'll look at matchups. I'll do the analysis in detail to try and come up with the best formula, and I'll live with the results, right? I'm the only guy going to pull it. Now, in one of my other leagues, I have my longtime friend, and we've been in fantasy since 1987 together, Jim McArdle. Him and I have a team together. There's also number one in points in our league. And, we have conversations every Thursday and every Sunday about who we should play and who we should sit. And with there, at least I'm bouncing it off somebody. But, this other team, when you got to make the decision, you select the button and you let it go, right? So we'll see what happens. But it is so fun. I mean, this is what it's about to me. Everybody talks about the draft and the beginning of the season, so exciting, and you love to do it. But the grind of the waiver wires and keeping your roster together and picking up guys and doing that stuff, it makes I live in the East Coast. It makes the winters so much more tolerable than it does when, you're sitting there and you're out of it. Because to be honest with you, there's teams that in 2 weeks, they're going to be done, right? So, I just want to keep it going for as long as I can. And I know with a couple of these teams, I'm going to be playing through week 17, which is always exciting.
This is the first year I should say in a certain amount of time. This is the first year I'm playing in like 40 some leagues, and 30 of them are managed leagues. So I got to place waivers, every Wednesday, and I don't look forward to it. It's not the most fun thing in the world, but I know that while I'm counting the weeks down before those, waiver wires lock for the season, I know I'm going to miss it. Once they lock, I know, oh God, Wednesday, what am I going to do with myself? I don't have to place waivers anymore. It's crazy.
Well, as you know, Bogey, we've been doing this long enough where, the days of what it used to be versus what it is now. I click on a program now and it tells me who's available, who's not available. It limited my time, probably cut it in half, if not more. So, it makes it a lot easier when you have all these tools at your disposal that can utilize and tell you who's available. And the website's good now too, because you can go online, and you can look at your teams individually right from the homepage. So there's a lot of features that have been created in technology that help with that process. But I agree with you. It is a grind, and it can be cumbersome. But like I said, you enjoy it. When you're in a position where you're looking at potentially $1 million, and you're going to be one of X number of teams or X number of people, those odds, you don't have those in your favor very much, especially like you pay the lottery to win them $1 million. You got a lot less chance. So that's the thrill of it.
I'll say this too about placing waivers and how I think it's gotten easier, and maybe in some respects more challenging. I think because there's so many content providers out there, so many people that are doing a lot of the work for us that we used to have to do, 10, 15, 20 years ago or whatever it is. The waiver wires, I think, have been picked more cleanly over the course of the last 3, 4, maybe even 5 years, where I go through my teams, Dave, and I'm like, okay, I'd like to pick up this, I go through the waiver wire. I'm like, I'd like to pick up this guy. I'd like to pick up this guy. But then I look at my teams. I'm like, I can't really drop anybody here. Like, I don't want to drop any of these injury away running backs. I'm going to need bye week help at wide receiver. I want to keep both these quarterbacks. Now we have 10 weeks of defensive team statistics, so we kind of have a pretty good handle on, can I play matchups with two different defenses? And so in that regard too, not only have the tools and everything gotten easier to place waivers, I think people have gotten sharper, and I think the waiver wire, the players available, it ain't what it used to be. Like it used to be, like you would go to, it was like kind of like a second draft every single week, right? And I look forward to like seeing what happened on Thursday morning. I check my waiver wire runs and my fabs and everything to see who I got or whatever. I don't really do that anymore because it's just, there's not really that many game changers that are available on the wire. And quite frankly, the big ads on the waiver wire are these guys that are set to go off in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Or they have the potential. Like, there's just nobody. There's not like a whole lot of immediate help. There's not a whole lot of game changers anymore, which is good and bad, right? Because if you drafted really good, well, then you're kind of set. If you didn't draft so good, man, it's tougher to build those teams off the wire.
Really, really hard these days. And the main event's even tighter than the 350s. I mean, you got the talent that's out there and the people that are drafting. These guys, everybody's sharp nowadays. So, I mean, you have to think 3 steps ahead. We'll talk about some, some potential, guys that you're looking on the waiver wire. But when you're talking, it's not like there's sexy picks out there that you're going to say, oh yeah, that's an easy selection. Not the way it used to be at all. And then now you have 2 waiver runs. Back in the day, you used to only have 1. So, and the information just comes in so fast and furious that if people aren't up on it, like you said, there's guys, if you would ask me at, I don't know, yesterday at 2:00 who I was going to pick up, and then ask me today at 4:00, there's guys that are at it. I mean, it's just literally that quick. And if you're not on top of it, you're not going to get them. So I try and look 2-3 weeks out of guys just potentially that could hit, because I want to have them, because if he's 1 injury away, I want him on my team. If he's 2 injuries away, he got to be pretty talented. So, I mean, kind of use that, but you kind of want to get those guys at a value. But the biggest problem is even when you get closer to the playoffs, your bench gets even tighter because you got to have that extra kicker. You got to have an extra quarterback. Now, if you want to carry 2 defenses, you're really limiting your roster. Now, I know at that point it's a 3-week sprint, but you can't. I've already been in this team, and I pay close attention. In this team, I picked up 2 kickers week 6. I picked up Brandon McManus. He got hurt. So Sunday or Saturday, I went online and I picked up Santos from Chicago. Well, lo and behold, it doesn't identify a question tab in the field. I pick him up and I still have a question mark next to the name, and he didn't end up playing. So I took a 0. And I think the kicker that replaced him had like 16 points that week. So you just never know. It's so hard and it's so difficult. And if you're not on top of it hour to hour, you can get lapped. So, as fun as it is, it's work, it's work. And the waiver wire is very, very tight, very tight.
I will say and I never root for injuries, obviously, right. But I do say that there is one of the best feelings is when you pick up a running back, for like $1 or $3 or $5, something super cheap off the waiver wire. And then all of a sudden he's vaulted into like a 1B or even like a 1A role because of an injury the following week. That is a good feeling, man. Like when you pick that guy up and you get a starting running back for a few bucks off the waiver wire the week before, just because you were proactive and saying, like, listen, I'm not going to root for injury. I understand the risk for injury, and this guy should not be out there. I'm going to pick him up, and it works out. That is such a good feeling.
Well, and Bulky, I'll be honest. I mean, I was happy, and he's not that he's a great player, but I mean, I may need him. But I picked up a Singletary, and like I said, he's getting some touches with the Jets. Now, I don't know if that's going to change because he was a favor of Dable, but I picked him up for cheap, and he's if a guy at that point that you're trying to get a 1 week out of is getting you 10 points, I'm ecstatic to get that 10 points out of that running back. I know when the week that Haskins and Vidal were available, there was a lot of people thinking that it was going to be Haskins. So, I mean, that, if you chose wrongly in that scenario, you wasted a bunch of fab on them. So, there's just, it's so fine a line between what makes a good team good and what makes you fail, that one of these things goes against you and it could cost you the season.
Yeah, and one of the things goes for you, and you're really in a prime position to do some damage for sure.
Absolutely.
I want to get into some player evaluations with you tonight, Dave. Some of these guys, I think most of these guys you have on some teams, not all of them, but I want to start off in Cleveland here. The Harold Fannin aspect, he gets 7 targets this past week. 4 for 44 is what he ends up with. David Njoku only saw 2 targets, but he did catch both of them, including 1 for a touchdown. And then something called a Jerry Jeudy went 6 for 78 and a touchdown on 12 targets this past week, which was crazy considering Dylan Gabriel only threw the ball 32 times. I want to focus it more on I think Jeudy plays into this a little bit, but when you're talking about starting Fannin in a tight end premium league, do you maybe think about it a little bit more now, and maybe you don't start him in every scenario because Njoku found his way into the end zone and Njoku's healthy now as well? How much does that factor into the conversation before you click on the box next to Harold Fannin every week?
Well, I mean, I view Fannin as a mid-tier tight end. I have Warren on both of the teams that I have him on. So obviously I'm using him this week. So if I was looking at him and, he's in that mid-tier range, there's a bunch of guys in that range. But when you having a guy getting 6.5 targets a game, regardless if the Njoku plays or doesn't play, with a guy that, his air yards, other than last week with Judy, has been pretty much very slim. He doesn't throw the ball downfield a lot, so he's going to hit those outlets, short outlets, and he's a prime target for it. So I have no issues playing him. I think in a tight end premium league, with him being my number one, if I can get 5 for 50 from him, I'm fine with it. I'm not going to rock the world. I'm not going to be in a situation because that's not the strength of my team. But I'm fine with him. Njoku really doesn't factor in too much to me. What I'm hoping for is a good game script from them. So they have a tendency. They lost this week to the Jets, so they don't typically throw the ball as much as you would like. But I'm high on him. I think he's good. I think he's the future. I think the quarterback that's with him right now, he fits his route pattern pretty well. So I'm fine starting him. And he would be, if I had another tight end, he would be a number 2 flex for me, or a number 4 flex for me if I got down to it, if I really needed him. But I'm fine with him as a mid-tier tight end.
I wanted to frame a Drake London question for you properly, and I was struggling to do it when I was trying to put this together. I thought that London had been kind of inconsistent this year, just on the surface. And I don't own him in a bunch of spots, but I do own him in a few spots. And then I started looking. And this dude, I'll start off with, these are his catches per game, starting with the first game of the season. 8, 3, 5, 8, 10, 4, 9, 6. Now, some I think you could label those clunkers, obviously the 3 and 4 catch games or whatever. But lately, man, he has been on point. 10, 16, 10, 14, and 8 targets over his last 5 games. He's just over halfway through the season, on pace for nearly 1,300 yards, over more than 100 catches, and a dozen touchdowns this year. When you consider where people drafted him, and I know they pushed him up quite a bit because there's a lot of excitement about Penix and this Atlanta offense, and I know Theo Greminger was talking on Fantasy Points that he was a dark horse to lead the league in targets, and I don't think he does it anymore. He missed a couple of games, whatever. But I will say that when you consider Drake London as a potential league winner this year, I don't think it's all that far-fetched. I think we can seriously talk about it because as the numbers dictate, this guy is putting up stats that we love as fantasy owners, obviously. But league winners normally associated with somebody who's drafted a little bit lower. Do you think London was drafted low enough where this guy could be a league winner this year, Dave?
I do. I'll be honest with you. He was that in that tier. Obviously you had him, Nico Collins, Puka. Those were all guys going in that range of wide receivers. I'll be candid with you. Penix is the guy that scares me. His accuracy is waning. I was kind of hoping when he sat the week that Kirk Cousins would have found the fountain of youth and shown some arm strength and be able to kickstart London. But Penix looks for him a lot. It's just his target, and he's just so inaccurate with his target. Sometimes he'll throw 10 feet over his head or he'll skip it to him. If that connection sticks, there's no question, based on the fact that they utilize him around in the red zone all the time. He's got to be one of the leaders in red zone targets. He's definitely got an opportunity to be a difference maker. Now, what I concern myself with is I don't have stacks anywhere. Now I don't know too many people that are going to go into the championship week with a Penix London stack. So I'm not worried about that beating me, but I definitely think London has the capability of putting up number 1 numbers in definitely a 3-week period. If you look at the last 3 weeks, last 4 or 5 weeks, he's been that guy. So it's definitely the potential's there. I just hope that they can get a little bit more accuracy from the quarterback.
It's such a concentrated target offense as well. It's like 3 guys, right? London, right, Pitts, and then Robinson. Like they don't really throw to Algier. They're not throwing to Mooney or McLeod or any of these other guys.
Right.
So yeah, I think that works in London's favor as well. Kamani Vidal we talked about him earlier, where he was the correct answer over Hassan Haskins off the waiver wire a few weeks back. When you look at what he's done since Hampton got hurt, I'm just purely going to give you the rushing numbers here. 18 for 124, then 9 for 20. 23 for 117, then 12 for 30. 25 for 95 and a touchdown against Pittsburgh this week. This is lazy analysis, but it's been kind of every other week for Vidal, which means this week against Jacksonville, he should be off. This should be a bad Vidal week if we're putting much stock into that, which I don't know if we are or not. But when you consider Kamani Vidal, I know that Hampton, I don't know, man. Like, I've heard so many different reports and beliefs on when this guy's coming back. I'm betting that it's going to be later than what people are thinking right now. So you could still ride that Kamani Vidal train. Are you riding it in Jacksonville this week, Dave?
I will be riding him. When I ranked them this week, I had him as like the 15th or 16th back on the week based on what I think. I was looking at projections. So, I mean, I think that he's still obviously, if you're in the top 24, you're a top 2 back. So, I mean, I 100% believe in him. That volume that he's getting and the amount of shares that he's getting, you just can't overlook it. I mean, with Herbert playing as well as he's playing, I know their offensive line losing Joe Alt's a big key. But, I mean, they were able to sustain against the Steelers. Now, I know the Steelers defense isn't the vaunted steel curtain that it used to be. However, he still did put up the numbers. He got the goal line touches. A little disappointed that he's not catching the ball as much as I'd like. I wouldn't mind seeing that aspect of him, get him in space a little bit more since he's a smaller type back. But 100% I'm riding with him. I mean, if you look at the list of backs, and you start narrowing it down to the guys that you would play this week, I have to believe that. I mean, unless you got a draft where you got, Bijan and you gifted into somebody like I don't know, Rico Dowdle or that caliber, then I could see sitting him. But he's still, to me, he's going to be in the top 20, no question.
Yeah, I think I'm high on him this week as well. I don't think I'm quite as high as you are, but I think in the leagues I have him, which is not enough, obviously, I probably will be starting him. It's going to be tough for me to find a team where I have 3 better options, or, even you consider FFPC,
right.
You're going to have 4 better options if you could start 4 running backs too. Right. I think Vidal is a guy you have to play. Now, on the flip side of this, a guy that I don't think is a must play and a guy who I think is far from a must play is Malik Washington. They play in Madrid, Spain on Sunday morning against the Commanders. Since Tyreek Hill has gone down, Washington's stats have gone up. He had a very weird 4 catches for 0 yards against Carolina in early October. One of the most bizarre stat lines you'll ever see. Right. Since then, 4 for 22, 5 for 30, 4 for 36 and a touchdown, 3 for 48. He only goes 2 for 9 against Buffalo this past week, but he does get in the end zone. And he's been getting, 4 or 5 carries since, over the course of the last month as well. Am I stretching it by saying he's a sneaky start against Washington this week? I know there's a lot of people out there that think the Dolphins are winning this game. And if they are going to win this game, it can't all be Waddle and HN, or right. Can it? I don't know. Maybe it could be. But your thoughts on Washington as a sneaky second flex in FFPC leagues in Madrid on Sunday against the Commanders?
Well, I think at the beginning of the year, my shares on him were probably about 90%. When I watched him in the preseason, obviously Tyreek Hill wasn't playing at the time. It seemed as if he was running and doing all the same things that they do with Tyreek Hill. He was doing the reverses. He was doing the quick slants. He was doing the behind the backfield passes. He was doing the rushing. And I'm like, well, and at the time, everybody was like, well, they may trade Hill. And they may, so I'm looking at him thinking, there's potential. Now, didn't realize that Tua wouldn't have played as well as he has played over the last, obviously from 2 years ago to where he's regressed to now. But I have a lot of shares of him still. I can't fit him into my lineup, but this is I think against Washington, I think he's definitely a viable play. Obviously, it comes down to who you're playing him over. But if I'm leaning, like if you would compare him versus Vidal, I would say I would play Vidal. And I would much rather play, and I probably 98 out of 100 times would play 4 wide receivers, 2 and 2 in my flex before I would pick a running back. But he's in that mix, especially if you need him, if you're got a bunch of injuries or, you have guys on bye. I know there's only 2 teams, Olave, Pierce and Pittman are pretty much the only guys you're going to lose this week. But he's got some value, and he could be one of those guys that could take you to a position, because I don't think a lot of people are going to be playing him. So I think there's some value there. I really do. If the offense has been playing pretty good the last couple of weeks. If you look at their, if you look at the team, I mean, they did pretty well against Buffalo, and he has been a part of it. So I think there's some juice there. I would not go against saying that there's zero chance I would play him. He's definitely a viable option.
I want to go from one offense that inexplicably put up big numbers against Buffalo in the Dolphins,
right,
to another offense that, man, I don't know. The last 2 weeks for the Packers at home, Carolina, you really struggle all game against the Panthers. I'm talking about the offense specifically.
Right.
And then last night, Monday Night Football against the Eagles, which granted is a really good defense, but to only put up 1 touchdown, I think was concerning. I have heard and made excuses for this offense over the course of the last month or so, but excuses don't win fantasy leagues. What's your level of panic? Is it a panic about the Packers offense in general? There's a lot to unpack here, Dave.
Right. Well, again, they're not running the ball as effectively as they did last year. And Love has been inconsistent. When he played against the Steelers, he looked like a world beater, and then he comes back with 2 terrible games. I understand his wide receiving core is not great. I think LaFleur is a good coach, but when they're throwing out average wide receivers, I think they had a cornerback converted to a wide receiver last night, and they're throwing to him on 4th down. Losing Kraft does not help. Obviously, he seemed to be a staple for Love as an option that he would hit in case of emergency, but that receiving core just doesn't wow me. I mean, Romeo Doubs is having a great year. I mean, I don't think he's even a great 2. If I was looking at him, I think he's probably a 3. Golden being hurt obviously doesn't help, but they are just not, with consistency, running the ball effectively enough for them to open up the play action to allow him to get the ball downfield. I mean, he just threw. It seemed like with Watson, he was just throwing the ball and hoping that he would catch it.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like there was any method to their madness last night. Tough defense. I get it. But see, that's where I go on to the coaching is if something's not working, get these guys in space, run little slants, run different patterns to get these guys some opportunity, catch and runs, things like that. I know they threw a little bit more screen passes to Jacobs last night than they have most of the year, which I think is a good thing. The one late in the game, Jacobs just ran a terrible pattern.
Yeah.
And he cut in and he threw it out. And had he gone out, they would have been in field goal range because he beat the linebacker and he was wide open in space. So little things like that in the NFL is what makes you win or lose week in and week out. And it was a simple play late in the game. As bad as they played, they probably had an opportunity to win it or a minimum tie it and take it to overtime. But their receivers, they really lack at the wide receivers position. And again, not having Golden, but they haven't really utilized Golden to, I think, his potential so far this year. So I got to put that on the coaching staff. I mean, that is, you got to get the guys the ball that are your best players. And sometimes these coaches, they overthink things and they think they're smarter than everybody. And, listen, A.J. Brown complains all the time on the other side of the field that he's not getting enough touches. When you're getting 2 catches a game, I mean, okay, I know you got Barkley, but it's not like they were running the ball so effectively that they couldn't have pushed the ball to him a little bit more than they did. So, part of it's scheme, part of it's, the defense is just good. And, but they're not getting some of these guys the opportunity. But I don't know who I would say with the team they had on last night, who they could get the ball to other than probably Watson, but he seems to be just a deep threat.
The problems I saw last night, obviously I don't want to make excuses, but not having Dobbs and Kraft out there, something you had mentioned, that hurt. Jaden Reed also wasn't out there last night. Christian Watson kind of got taken away a little bit because the Eagles are playing a lot of too high safety,
Right.
and it's really difficult to get, take the lid off a defense when they're daring you to run the ball, and the Packers couldn't run it effectively. That
Right.
offensive line has had some issues as well. I think what's I don't want to say most concerning, but it's definitely very concerning to me. I was watching this game last night with a bunch of Packers fans, not fantasy guys.
Right.
And they, on more than one occasion, more than one of them said to me, boy, it almost seems like the Eagles know what play is coming here before it happens. And then that final play of the game on that 4th and 1, you heard the defensive lineman for Philly on the broadcast calling inside zone this way, inside zone this way. That's exactly what happened. Josh Jacobs said after the game they knew what play we were running. And then again, that comes back to the coaching where it's getting a little predictable. You go back to that Carolina game. Late in that game last week, Matt LaFleur loves to call that little bubble screen to the wide receiver. He called it like for the 5th time that game, and it got blown up in the backfield by a safety. And so I think predictability is a concern with this Packers offense. They have the talent. I think that they can make it happen there. But this stuff kind of starting to get turned on here, especially with no Tucker Kraft. And if it doesn't, we're breaking ties in our fantasy lineups against Green Bay Packers.
Right.
That includes Love, Watson, Dobbs, Musgrave to a certain extent as well. All right, enough about that. Let's go to San Francisco, Dave. Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall both have chances to play this week. It sounds like both of them are going to return to practice. Well, I guess Purdy was practicing in a limited fashion last week, but Pearsall, it sounds like he's going to be starting to practice early this week on Wednesday. Now, if we look at they played the Rams last week, and I think there was some concern about having Purdy come back in that game. Hit his first game back facing, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, and that pass rush of Los Angeles. Now he has the opportunity to come back against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, granted, this is on the road in the desert, but the Niners are 2.5-point favorites. What's your level of confidence about putting Pearsall and Purdy in your starting lineups right away this week in their first games back from, quite frankly, lengthy injury absences?
Yeah, I mean his foot injury for as far as Purdy is a little concerning to me because if he doesn't have the ability to run, I don't know how much value I put with him to throw him in week 1. Again, it's all roster construction. Not sure who you're picking. Obviously if you have a Daniel Jones and he's on a bye, you're going to have to plug him in there. I mean, if you look at Mac Jones though, that I'm a Kyle Shanahan. I like the way he runs his offense. What was he last week? 33 of 38 last week. I mean, he's put up over 300 yards, Mac Jones, I think in 2 or 3 of the games that he started. So Purdy can have value. He really can. But he's also, he's sneaky with the runs. And if he adds that to his repertoire, he can be a guy that can bring you over the edge. And I would probably put him in a lower tier. I don't think I would have him in my top 12. For the week if he plays. But I think I had him at about 15 or 16. But based on your need, you can look to play him. Now, as far as I think we've been hearing about the receiver coming back for 3 weeks. I've been hearing off and on that he's coming back. And Pearsall had a great end of last year. I think he had about 18, 19 targets. It was obviously without McCaffrey playing. I think Debo was banged up. No Ayuk. Now he's going to come back, and he has Jennings, and he has Kittle, and obviously McCaffrey's there. He's going to get his 7-8 targets a game. I would not start him this week. He can be explosive, and I know him and Purdy have a great connection. You could see that in the preseason when they were playing together. But as a plug and play for this week with limited teams on bye, he wouldn't be a guy I would want to start. I'm gonna probably wait on him until I see him do something. So I'm gonna miss a week on him. If he plays and he blows up and he has a 25, 30-point week, I would probably miss a week on him before I would start him.
Yeah, for guys like this who missed a lot of time, I don't really get too bent out of shape if I don't play them their first week back and they go off. Like it's just I accept that. I understand the risk. I think more often than not, they come back slow. They come back on limited snaps.
Right.
And, if the guy blows up and he's hyper efficient, tip your hat and, hey, great, I can play him next week. but I don't get
Absolutely.
too out of shape
Yeah,
about it.
I'm the same way. I'm very hesitant about starting guys that it just is their first week back coming in at this time of the season. I'm leery at the beginning of the season when they don't play any preseason games and they come back and they try and play in week one. This is kind of very similar. These guys have been playing for 10 weeks now, and he's going to come in here, and I'm skeptical of that as well. So yeah, he would be a hold for me and a wait. And once he proves it, and if he can be consistency, then I would obviously consider him at that point.
I want to go to the YouTube chat right now, Dave, and get Tom Smith's question up here. He's asking, we got a lot of Bill Nowitzki, Rubio, they're all in there tonight hanging out watching us. Thanks, guys. He wants to know, do any of us dare start any of the Washington running backs in Madrid, Spain against the Dolphins defense? You got Ja'Cory Krosky, Merritt, obviously on this team. Jeremy McNichols is another player. I don't really want to turn this into a Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt episode, but I do think there's something there. The talent is there. For whatever reason, the matchup hasn't been, offensive line hasn't been great, but I do believe in Krosky Merritt. That said, I don't know if it happens this year with Marcus Mariota under center. Right. And by the time Daniels comes back, if he comes back, I don't know what the Commanders are playing for. So yeah, on the surface, this seems like a good matchup, right? Against the Dolphins, but I don't know, man. Like Krosky Merritt's the only guy I'd consider, and I think I'm going to find somebody better than him this week.
Yeah, I mean he's way down on my list. I don't know what Kingsbury's doing with him. He's obviously, you can watch the games and see he's clearly the best back that they have. It seems they're putting guys in on third down in special situations. I would not trust him. I agree with you. I think he's the most talented back there, and I think there's something to him on a moving forward basis. He's going to be a guy I'm going to keep my eye on and write specific notes about for next year. Second year guy in an offense that should be productive with a running quarterback. You love those scenarios, right? It's not clicking this year for whatever reason. Now, obviously, injuries aside, McLaurin has been, I think he's played a couple games. Obviously, the same when Daniels goes down and now he's limited, even if he comes back, I don't know if they're going to bring him back at this point. That team, I just wouldn't trust that team with Mariota. He seems to pull the ball down enough and run. Debo doesn't even run pretty much routes anymore. It seems like he sticks around the line of scrimmage. I think his average depth of target's like 2. So, I mean, it's tough to trust him. Again, you got to have a lot of injuries and be in a situation where you're really stuck because you're not going to find guys on waiver wire better than him. But if you have a bunch of injuries and a couple guys on bye, then that would be the only way I'd start him. But Miami's a great matchup. Well, they were. I mean, they kind of handled Buffalo. So, I mean, I don't know. They traded all their best defensive players, and they're playing the best defense of the year. So the NFL is an absolute crazy, crazy thing. So I wouldn't put anything past Miami at this point. I don't know if they're going to put up 40 and give up 40 or if they're going to get shut out. You just don't know. The NFL is just so unpredictable.
Yeah, I think it's wild, that the week after they give up these defensive players at the trade deadline, they put together their best performance of the season against the Buffalo Bills of all teams. And I will say this about the Bills, like they're 6-2, 6-3, whatever they are right now. But they've been a little shaky, and specifically about this Bills offense. I just ask you about the Packers offense. I think there's some similarities here between Green Bay and Buffalo, not so much from the quarterback standpoint. Buffalo has an MVP level quarterback. Jordan Love is not that for the Packers, but they had 2 tight ends that were, among their leading receivers this year. I don't know if Kincaid was their leading receiver, but he had to be darn close if he wasn't. They also don't have a true number 1. Neither one of these teams have a true number 1 receiver. Nope. And I wonder if that's maybe holding both these offenses back. What about the Bills offense? I'm not saying anybody's panicking about them this year, but certainly it's not what we signed up for the most part. James Cook got off to that great start. He's kind of leveled off a little bit. I don't know, man. What do you think about the Bills offense at this point?
They do not have one receiver that can get separation. And that extra second that he's holding the ball, waiting for a receiver to get open in the NFL just doesn't work. I mean, you got to hit these guys, before they come out of their break. And if you watch the tape, and I'll rewatch the games on a periodic basis, they are not getting even close to separation. Coleman just not doing. Now, I don't know. I don't know if Josh Palmer coming back is going to help them. Again, if we're talking about Josh Palmer being the thing that's going to put them over the edge, that's concerning in itself. But they just can't get separation at the wide receiver. So unless he puts on his Superman cape, Josh Allen, and does what he does, and he just doesn't turn the ball over, they're going to struggle to score points. I mean, they're keying up against the run. Obviously, if you stop Cook and he can't get receivers to come open, and your tight ends are your leading receivers, that's a tough way to live in the NFL for any team. So he can be the best quarterback in the league, but if he don't have guys to throw the ball to, and I know people will say, oh, well, Mahomes didn't have this guy and Mahomes didn't have that guy. I'm telling you, when you watch the tape, they just do not get away from the D-backs. It's unbelievable. Every throw he makes is within a tight window. So, that's a hard way to live in the NFL. I don't know why they don't scheme more plays. Like they did that a couple years ago with Shakir, where they would scheme him and he would have a lot of catch and runs. They don't seem to be doing that this year as much. And it doesn't seem like Allen he's a little bit more hesitant to run. Maybe they want to keep him protected for the playoffs, but they better get it straight in a hurry. But that receiving core I don't think it's going to be productive on a long-term basis.
Brian Daboll is not going to be in New York on a long-term basis anymore, as he was let go after their loss. Another loss
hires him.
Yeah,
back in New York.
Yes, that's true. Giants off to another 2-8 record this season. They have named Mike Kafka as interim head coach. He is a guy that I think I don't know if he's ever been seriously considered as a head coach in the NFL before, but I think he's done some interviews for head coaching gigs. The Seahawks last year brought him back for a second interview, so he had to be close there. Same thing this past year with the Saints. This is a guy who I remember when he played quarterback in the NFL, and now he's been a coach in the NFL for 8 years. He's been the Giants offensive coordinator now. I think this is his fourth year doing that. And I don't know, like this guy coached alongside Andy Reid. So there's certainly something that has to be said for that. When you look at the Giants offense going forward now with Kafka in charge, I know Dart's in the concussion protocol. Scadaboo and Neighbors are out for the season. Is there anything that you like here from the Giants skill position players better now that Kafka is going to be running things as opposed to Brian Daboll?
I mean, the short answer is no. I mean, I'm glad I don't have any. I'm glad I have no shares. I mean, like I said, I did pick up Singletary, but I mean, he's a desperation, what the heck type of flex player for me if I ever use him. But I just, with Dart, there was some juice there. If Dart comes back, I think the way he scrambles and the way he keeps and extends drives and can get the guys the ball in the right position, I like him. I think he can be now he's a little risk taker, and I think he's been hurt in 2 of the 3 games that he's had. But you're sitting there with a guy that if he's healthy, there's some juice to that team. Without him and with Russell Wilson and, living in Pittsburgh, watching him all last year, the game's just passed him by. I mean, he can make some throws deep, but that offense, I don't see that there's going to be any productivity coming from that offense. The tight end was doing very well with Jackson Dart, but I don't know if Wendell Robinson and Slayton are going to be viable starts. Tracy and Tracy's in that tier with the Krosky Barretts. You can plug them in and hope. But I have no confidence in them, and who knows what he's going to do. A guy might want to come in and put a stamp on the team and try things differently. You don't know, so that would be a hard no for me at this point. Mr.
Bakesalot chiming in on YouTube right now. He's got a redraft trade question. And I love this deal if you can get it done. He'd be giving up Rome Odunze and Jamison Williams to get Jamar Chase. We found out that Joe Burrow is trying to get back by Thanksgiving this year, which would give him, the opportunity to be throwing to Chase and T. Higgins and putting up numbers, not only for the fantasy playoffs, but maybe the last month and a half of the season, which would be great. I know it's only half point PPR, but I love getting the best player in the deal. We're going to have benches not as important as they were earlier in the season with the bye weeks behind us here. So the Jamison Williams depth, the best part of the depth is behind us during, previously this season. You don't have to worry about the depth as much anymore. If you're able to trade Odunze and Jamison Williams and get Jamar Chase, who might get Joe Burrow back here pretty quick, I love this deal if you can get it done.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you like the best player in the deal. Now, the only thing I'm hesitant about is Dan Campbell took over the play calling duties in Detroit last week, and one of his keys was I want to get Jamison Williams the ball. He was one of the guys I was targeting in that 5th, 6th round range that I had potential, and I have him on my team with Jim McArdle. He's one of the guys, and we stacked him with Goff. So I'm a little high on him. Now, Odunze has been hit or miss. I knew after getting 0 catches the previous week, they were going to try and feed him the ball the following week. But when you get the best player that that in the draft that can obviously win you a league and win you weeks, that's very, very hard to pass up. Now, I don't know the rest of the team. I don't know, if you're going to be who you're playing. You can look and say, yeah, I got the best guy. But if now you got to start guys that you don't want to start or you don't think are in the top 36 at your wide receiver position, then I would be a little hesitant to give up the 2 for 1. But in a trade scenario where you're getting the best player and the most consistent player of the bunch, I would definitely agree with that. I would take Chase.
The next question I have for you here, Dave, and I think this plays into the Travis Hunter news we got today, where we found out he had season-ending surgery on his knee. He'll be back in 2026, 6-month recovery for him. We'll have all offseason to debate how high we want to take him next year. But let's look at Jacksonville. They just traded for Jacoby Myers at the trade deadline. I don't know how serious the Brian Thomas ankle injury is. I mean, it could be a multi-week thing. Well, I mean, it probably will be a multi-week thing. It could be like a several-week thing. I don't know. Or maybe he'll come back here sooner rather than later. Brenton Strange has got to be getting closer to be coming back off of IR, but he's coming back to a passing game that maybe doesn't count on him as much as they did at the start of the year. He got hurt. At the time he got hurt, he was leading the Jaguars in targets, catches, yards. He was doing it all. But now he comes back to a passing game that also has Jacoby Myers. How do you think Strange factors back in to this offense when he does come back, given the changes that the offense has underwent and also given the amount of time that Strange has been off?
Yeah, well, it seems Trevor Lawrence favors his tight end for the most part. Now, he doesn't have one now, but I mean, Evan Ingram last year had a decent, productive year with him. And like you said, Strange was leading the team in targets going into before he got injured on that Monday night game. So I'm high on him. I just picked him up. I actually had him. I dropped him, and I picked him back up. I needed the roster spot, so I figured I'd take a shot and actually picked him up in 2 of my leagues. So I think in a tight end premium league, the way that we are with these things, they're so valuable. I don't think that there's too many tight ends. He's going to be a mid-tier tight end. I still believe that. I still believe that if you're looking, he's going to be in that, 12 to 8 range as far as tight ends. I mean, you look at these tight ends. I mean, when you're getting 10, 11, 12 points, you're a mid-tier tight end. The 2 top guys, when you look at, obviously, McBride's starting to come on with Brissett and things like that. But I don't think that I would hold a roster spot with him because I think there's some value there and some potential for him. If you can get him and he's, part of your tight end crew and you run into an injury situation, if your tight end doesn't play, I think he can be valuable. I really do. I think that offense is keen, and I think Trevor Lawrence does rely on the tight end in order for him to move the ball.
Yeah, tight end premium leagues. If this guy is available, I haven't looked at the numbers on it, but if this guy's available, you got to make sure you're picking him up as soon as you can. I just play in non-tight end premium leagues with KFFSC, so on and so forth. And I tried not to cut him. Like, I think I had to cut him in one league, but I tried to keep him around because I like having that sort of ace up my sleeve that I can either dump in at tight end or I can dump in at flex, in the right matchup down the stretch with Strange. We'll see what happens there. It's a former second-round pick. I mean, he's a pedigreed guy, and you mentioned Lawrence's penchant for throwing to the tight end in that offense. as well.
Well, and Liam Cohen, I was really hopeful. I was a little high on Jacksonville to begin the year, and I've kind of been wrong on them. I thought that Liam would getting Trevor Lawrence going. Now he has been the victim of so many drop passes, whether it be the wide receivers on either side. He's had so many drop passes and so many touchdowns dropped this year that, you kind of look at him but he's been struggling as a quarterback. Some of his throws are just inaccurate and he doesn't seem to have that potential to take his team and put them on his shoulders and take them to victory. So I think I'm still going to believe in the offense. I'm still going to believe in that tight end premium league and in that position. And I think Strange can definitely be valuable down the end.
The last thing I have to ask you is something that we kind of touched on earlier. And, I've been getting wild answers on this question, Dave. I usually end each show with this question, and I've been getting wild answers on it because everybody's waiver wire is so different, even in the FFPC with main events, big gorillas, and what have you. And we talked about how thin it's been. It's difficult. But if there is a player that you're looking to target on the waiver wire this week, and you play in several leagues, I'd be curious to know who you're going after, as well as a player that maybe you're ready to give up on and part ways with heading into week 11. Yeah,
well, I'm going to probably be picking up Tyler Batty in most of the leagues. I don't know if it's official that they're going to put Dobbins on the IR. But if so, you have a rookie running back there. Now, there may be some other value there, but I'm going to probably take my shot with him and see what happens. Perrine in Cincinnati hurt his ankle prior to the bye week. He's available in some of the leagues. I'm going to check his status. And if he's not available, I'm going to go after Taj Brooks because now you're looking at he's one injury away from being the guy in an offense that quite frankly, Flacco kind of has him going. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind having that guy in my backfield if Chase gets hurt. Perrine was actually effective. I actually had to use him the week I picked him up. I actually had to use him, and I think he put up 17 points and a touchdown for me, which, what a steal. I think I got him for $1, like you said. He was one of those guys. I put him in 1 week. Now, I'm probably ready to cut him, like I said, because based on the fact that he hurt his ankle the previous week. I don't know his status for this week's game yet, but I'm going to check that out before I make my waiver claims. So Perrine or Taj Brooks are going to be on my list. And then, like I said, Tyler Batty would be the other running back that I would look at. I'm also going to look at, and I mentioned them early, I'm going to look at guys, like you said, Strange injury guys that are potentially coming back. Josh Palmer, Strange, guys like that may have been cut early on that may have some value that you can plug and play in the coming weeks. Because like you said, it's so hard and so tough to find talent on the waiver wire. But, you just take shots and you hope that some of them pan out. But those are the guys I'll be targeting, and I'll look to put some bids in on this week.
What about anybody you're done with that you're like, okay, well, if I'm going to take some stabs here on guys like Taj Brooks, on guys like Tyler Bidet or whatever, are there any players that you're ready to say, okay, you know what, I don't have room for this guy anymore? Yeah,
I mean, I have Darius Slayton on a couple teams, and I'm probably going to be done with him. If Russell Wilson's going to be the quarterback for the next couple weeks, I just don't see myself playing him. And this is when I start getting thin anyway. So these guys that I'm getting, I'm getting thin on and sitting on and waiting on, I'm going to have to let go sooner rather than later. I don't know if it's this week or next week where it locks. I think it's this. I don't want to be cutting someone and then they come back and they beat me in the week. But I know there's this point in time where I think the waiver, once you cut a guy, they're no longer allowed to be picked up. So I got to verify that. But I don't know if I'm going to give up on Gainwell yet, but he's on that list. But being in Pittsburgh, they won't give the ball to the best back enough. And I know Gainwell's a decent, veteran back, but he's out snapping Warren right now. But his productivity just isn't there. And he'd be a guy I'd probably cut ties with when I got to start adding an extra kicker and maybe an extra quarterback for the stretch run. Any of those guys like that, the guys in Dallas, I'm going to keep Algier, and I'm going to look, I'm going to look to keep the guys that I think are, if the guy in front of them gets hurt, they're a top 20 guy. right? You don't want to get rid of those guys. There's not too many of them left that I think, but I don't know if Gainwell's that anymore. Steelers offense just isn't as productive. And those type of guys would be the guys I'd be looking to get rid of.
Last point. Let's talk about your Steelers real quick. They were looking really good for a while, and then you mentioned the Green Bay game. They obviously had that Cincinnati loss.
Right.
The Sunday night game this past week where the offense just couldn't get anything going late in that game against the Chargers. How do you feel about the Steelers offense right now?
Well, I'm not a big Arthur Smith guy to begin with. His offense, now he's trying to work these 3 tight ends, which was effective against Cincinnati, but I think you could have done anything against Cincinnati and it would have been effective. So I don't know how much stake I put in the 3 tight ends worked. Now I know McVay's using it with the Rams and it's working tremendously. I don't know. Their offense, they don't throw the ball downfield. Everything's short of the line of scrimmage or, quick outs. And in the NFL, if you're not spreading the field, you look at Mahomes last year, as good of a quarterback as he is, when they can't spread the field and move the ball downfield, the difference in his offense now versus, last year and even adding in Rice when you have the deep threat of Worthy, that goes a long way. They've been searching, they brought in Marcus Valdez-Scantling, that connection from Green Bay to try and boost some depth and get some deeper patterns. But I don't know. Rodgers still has a great arm, but he's so immobile, and their line's not the greatest. And if they're not going to hand the ball off to Warren, who's obviously their best back, and let him go and be productive, he got out-snapped, and he didn't play 1 third down snap, and he's a good catching down back. That makes no sense to me. So, I don't have much faith. The defense is the highest paid defense in the league, and they can't stop anybody. They played a great first half. And maybe they got frustrated. The offense couldn't move the ball. But at the end of the day is they have been a sieve. Jordan Love went through him. Joe Flacco went through them. Sam Darnold, they didn't have much resistance. And that's at home, the Steelers, when you're not being able, when you can't stop the run, and now you allow teams to put up 30 points on you on a consistent basis, I think they're old, and I think they're going to be in a situation where they're going to be in a rebuild, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch that team going forward, see what they do at the quarterback position next year as well. A lot of questions there, and hopefully they can get it together and make a run this year in an AFC where the Ravens are trying to claw their way back out of their hole. The Bills look suddenly beatable. It might just be the Chiefs again this year in the AFC, the way they're playing. Who the heck knows?
Right.
I'm more intrigued to see who's going to win this $1 million, and maybe it'll be one Dave Chiodo, who stands in 11th place overall in the FFPC Main Event heading into Week 11. Already 8 titles, high stakes titles to his name. Dave, always enjoy chopping it up with you. Thanks so much for coming on tonight. Enjoy not only this week but the remainder of the season. And if you win that $1 million, we'll have to do this podcast again for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. You guys do a great job. I always tell you that. You guys make it fun, and your content and other people. It's awesome what you do, and this is such a great hobby for so many people, and you bring so much joy to people. I can't thank you enough, and the guys from the FFPC that run this. It's such a professional organization. And then, like I said, I went from a home league to basically saying I'm not doing it anymore because it's so well run. So kudos to you, and thanks for the work you do, and thanks for the invite, my friend.
Thank you, Dave. Be good. We'll talk with you again very soon.
Be good. Thanks, Eric. Take care.
You too. That is Dave Chiodo, ladies and gentlemen. 11th place overall in the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. After 10 weeks of play, 8 high-stakes league titles to his name. Will he add number 9 this year with $1 million next to it? You never know. We'll see what happens there. That's going to complete our show tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, want to remind you to play in the FFPC Weekly Challenge. The Thursday and the Sunday challenge are live at myffpc.com. There's no draft with this. There's no salary cap. You're just picking 10 or 12 players, depending upon if you want to play in a league with kickers and defenses or not. 1 player per NFL team. If you want Aaron Rodgers, you can't have Darnell Washington. If you want Jalen Hurts, you can't have Dallas Goedert. You can win up to $2,500 in these leagues every single week. 10, 30, and 100 team contests are available at myffpc.com. myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Let's tell you about the schedule this week. We had Dave Chiodo tonight. Thursday night, FFPC Insider Access will feature Roto-Baller's own Casey Kasem, who will join me for 2 full hours beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We'll take you into the second quarter of Thursday Night Football. We'll be on Trevion Henderson watch as the Patriots take on the Jets, who, God, what a bunch of sad sacks that is for fantasy. Aside from Breece Hall, I don't know if you can play anybody, but we'll talk about that coming up on Thursday night from 7 to 9. And then, of course, Friday night, High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour will be me and Farrell Elliott making his triumphant return. He is back in the country, and it's going to be a great show because we will be joined by another high-stakes player who's having a really baller season so far. His name is Vinny Bonta, and Vinny Bonta is going to be joining us as he is currently in the FFPC Main Event, as I look this up right now, 9th place overall in the FFPC Main Event. So he's going to join us on Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern time, and that'll be your FFPC shows this week. So I want to thank Dave Chiodo, each and every one of you, for viewing, watching, streaming, listening, downloading, whatever may be. So glad you always spend your Tuesday night with us here on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. We will be back again at 10 p.m. Eastern time next week with Donnie Andrews and Brady David, the guys who won the 2021 FPC $500,000 grand prize. And they're in the hunt this year, once again, in both the Big Gorilla in the main event, hanging out at the top of the leaderboards there. They're going to join me on this show next Friday. I beg your pardon, next Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. For Dave Chiodo, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown on the FFPC YouTube channel. Enjoy placing those bids tomorrow, and we will talk with you again Thursday. This show will go live again next Tuesday. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate each and every one.
Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on Apple Podcasts under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email at rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and connect with us on X at RotoVizRadio. Remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount using the code RVRadio2025. That's RVRADIO2025 through the NFL Podcast homepage at rotoviz.com/podcast.